this demo, I will show you some new features of the DEx SysML Bridge. The bridge connects doors on Enterprise Architect in real time and can exchange data in both directions, including not only requirements, but packages, elements, diagrams, any kind of element really. And that is a new thing that was not in version 1. Links in doors can also be mapped onto relations in Enterprise Architect. The basic idea behind the bridge is to provide traceability between the parts of the system model that's in doors and the parts that's in Enterprise Architect. This means using the best tool for each purpose. In doors, I have prepared a demonstration project consisting of 2 modules. We have the stakeholder requirements and we have the system requirements. And these are the requirements for a small versatile leisure vessel, the FlexiBoat. As you can see, there is an attribute class here that shows which objects that are requirements. So if we have a look at requirements down here, you can also see that there's a link here from the system requirements to the corresponding objects in the stakeholder requirements. And the idea is to make this information available not only in doors but also in Enterprise Architect. In Enterprise Architect, we have let's see, that we have a design model for the FlexiBoat, and it shows the different subsystems of the FlexiBoat as SysML blocks. We have the hull subsystem, the navigation subsystem, the propulsion subsystem, the rowing subsystem, and the sailing subsystem. And it would be nice to have that information in doors as well. So first I will show you how to transfer the requirements into Enterprise Architects. I have prepared package here, FlexiBoat STRS, where I want to put the stakeholder requirements. So let's start the SysML Bridge. Here I start an instance of the SysML Bridge for this stakeholder requirements module. And I need to connect to Enterprise Architect. And to the left, you can see the current object in doors. And to the right, you can see the current object in Enterprise Architect. Now let's transfer this information. And as you can see, packages are created for all the heading objects in doors. And when this is done, let's see. If we have a look here, we can see that the requirements objects, those objects with class rec in doors, they are mapped onto requirements objects in Enterprise Architect, SysML requirements. There's also, as you can see, an automatic navigation here, which means that if I select an object on the door side, like STRS 18, for example, here, if I click here, then the corresponding object gets automatically selected in Enterprise Architect. And it also works the other way around. If I select paddling, for example, the package paddling here, and well, doors does not detect that I've selected another object. I need to refresh. But as soon as I refresh and get the current object from Enterprise Architect, the corresponding object in doors is also selected. So this means that you can easily navigate between doors and Enterprise Architect. Now let's also transfer the system requirements. So I will need to start another instance of the SysML Bridge for this module. And I connect to Enterprise Architect. I want to put this in the system requirements. In this package system FlexPut SCRS that I already created in Enterprise Architect. So now let's transfer that information as well. And what's being transferred here are, of course, the heading objects that are mapped onto packages and the requirements that are mapped on to SysML requirements in Enterprise Architect, but also the links between the requirements. They are also transferred into Enterprise Architect. So how does this work really? There is a configurable mapping that defines what to transfer. And you can view this, edit this mapping using the mapping editor. And here you can see now there are a number of mappings here. We have object mappings and we have attribute mappings. An object mapping, like this one, we state that objects of class rec that should be mapped onto elements of type SysML requirement. If I double click on this, I can change the mapping if I like. But this is the condition for what constitutes a requirement in doors. The attribute class shall be equal to rec. And the corresponding condition in Enterprise Architect is that it needs to be an element of type SysML 1.4 requirement. And these object mappings, they control the creation and deletion of objects. We have a corresponding object mapping here for the packages. Heading objects in doors. The objects with a non-empty object heading, they are mapped onto package objects in Enterprise Architect. Now, for each of these object mappings, we have a number of attribute mappings also. And they tell you which attribute information to transfer between the tools. So let's have a look at this one. It states that the object text in doors is mapped in both directions onto a tagged value text in Enterprise Architect. This is where you shall put the requirements text in the SysML requirement. And you can see that the object identifier that goes into the name attribute in Enterprise Architect. And the direction here is one way only. It can only be transferred from doors into Enterprise Architect because it's read-only in doors. And the thing that makes links the thing that makes it possible to transfer links is this link mapping. Well, this mapping states that dependencies in Enterprise Architect of stereotype derived requirements are mapped onto requirement to requirement links in doors. And let's have a look at some objects here. Let's select, we can select this one, for example, the SCRS43. And as you can see now in Enterprise Architect, let's get rid of these user interfaces. I minimize them, so they are still active. So the navigation functions, they still work, but let's get rid of them. Let's minimize them. So if I look at SCRS43 here in Enterprise Architect, you can see that it has dependencies now to STRS4 and to STRS31. And I guess these are the same objects that they correspond to these links in doors, yes. Object 4, Object 4 and Object 31. And I could, for example, create a requirements diagram in Enterprise Architect. And let's take this requirement 43, move it in here. Well, I would like to see requirements text, so I need to show the tagged values. So here you have the requirement and the requirement text. Okay. Now I would like to drag the stakeholder requirements into the same diagram. Let's find them first. So if I select them in doors here, they get selected in Enterprise Architect. There it is. I can move it over here. And the other one, 31, there it is. And here it is in Enterprise Architect. So here you can see that the links on the door side are mapped onto derived requirement relations in Enterprise Architect. An important thing to note with regards to link mappings is that it's the outgoing links that are being mapped. So it's the outgoing links from the system requirements to the stakeholder requirements that are mapped onto derived requirements in Enterprise Architect. And for the mapping to work, you actually need to set up a link restriction. So you use the normal doors interface for setting up link restrictions, link sets here. So you need to have a link restriction that says that it is possible to link to the stakeholder requirements. Because the bridge uses this information when searching for potential target objects. Now let's have a look at how changes are being handled. Now I need this user interface again. Yeah, system requirements. So if I, for example, change this requirement text in doors, the main hull shall not be longer than 4.5 meters. I change this to 5 meters. And now you can see that the SysML Bridge has detected that there has been a change on the door side. recent change on the door side. And this green arrow indicates that you need to synchronize this information into Enterprise Architect. Because in Enterprise Architect you still have 4.5 meters, I guess. Let's have a look. Tag value text. Yeah, 4.5 meters. So now I can synchronize this individual requirement if I like, or I could synchronize the hull chapter, for example. Yeah, let's do that. Let's show the log also. There's a log here that shows you what happens. So I clear the log. And now let's synchronize the hull chapter. And there you can see that now the text has been modified in Enterprise Architect as well. So if I'll now look at this change requirement, yeah, it's been changed in Enterprise Architect as well. But let's say now that I change this on both sides. There's some conflict detection here. So let's say I change this to 5.5 meters on the door side, and on the Enterprise Architect side I change it to 4 meters. So now when I select this object, you get red arrows indicating that there's a conflict. It has to change on both sides since the last synchronization. So now you need to sort of solve this situation, and it's really the sync direction that determines which of these new texts that will have priority. So we could, for example, synchronize from Enterprise Architect into doors. Let's just synchronize this individual object. And now you see the main hull shall not be longer than 4 meters. So now we have 4 meters on both sides. Well, let's close these doors modules now, and let's have a look at getting the SysML blocks from Enterprise Architect into doors. So I close the instances of SysML Bridge that I got, and let's close also the doors modules here. Now I have prepared an empty module here with a flexible architectural design. And here I want to get the SysML blocks. What I would like to have is this entire architecture view structure. I would like to have this package structure as a chapter structure in doors. And I want the SysML blocks to be system elements on the door side. So I have prepared so that you can the class also contains system element as a possible value. And this is meant to correspond to the SysML blocks. So let's have a look at the mapping. Now this is the default mapping, and it does not really make sense in this situation. I don't want to transfer requirements. So I could actually delete this object mapping and all its attribute mappings. I still need a package mapping, but I now need a new object mapping. I need to map elements of type SysML block onto objects of class system element. And now I need some attribute mappings as well. I need to add an attribute mapping that stays as the object identifier. I want to have this as tagged value ID. Oh, sorry. I need to have the correct transfer direction. Can only go from doors into Enterprise Architect. I need another attribute mapping stating that the identity shall go into the attribute name. And I also need the object text. The object text, there it is. I want to get that into attribute nodes. And finally, I'll need a link mapping also, because I want the satisfy relations between requirements and SysML blocks. I want that to be mapped onto links in doors between system elements and requirements. So I need to add a link mapping that says that, yeah, it should be this dependency and it should be of type satisfy. And it goes to SysML requirement. Like this. And so that's the object mapping for the system elements. Finally, I would also like to transfer the diagrams. So I need a diagram mapping. It's an object mapping for the diagrams. So I create a new object mapping and I state that should be diagram, any type of diagram should go into objects with class diagram. This controls the creation and deletion of objects, but I also need to state where I want to put the diagram picture, the diagram bitmap. So I need an attribute mapping for that, stating that now let's see, the object text there, I want to have it. And from the outdoors, I want to get the diagram bitmap and put it into the object text. So, and now let's save this mapping. There you are. And it was accepted, which is nice. So now let's try to transfer this architecture view into this architecture chapter. So I need to start an instance of the SysML Bridge, connect to Enterprise Architect, and I need to deselect dry run, and I want to get the diagrams also. So now let's transfer, and I want to put it below this heading 3. And I guess this takes some time because the diagrams are also being transferred. There you are. And I minimize. You can see that the structure in Enterprise Architect has now been transferred to doors. Let's save this. So I can see that all the diagrams have been transferred. Class diagram you can see here. And here is the system element FlexiBoat itself. And here is the hull subsystem, for example. The hull subsystem, with its description, is a system element. So this works precisely like with the requirements. The difference is now it's what we have transferred here are the system blocks. Now, if I want to allocate requirements onto these system elements, I guess I should get the system elements here. Here we have the system elements. And let's open the system requirements also. Is it possible to link? Yeah, I need to add the possibility to link from system requirements. Oh, sorry, it's the other way around, I guess. Yeah, sorry. Let's close this. I need to be able to link from these system elements onto the requirements that shall be satisfied. So let's have a look at link restriction. So yeah, it's possible to link to the system requirements. Okay. And that's important also for the link mappings to work. So for example, if I have a look at the requirements in here, let's only look at the requirements object. I can allocate requirements here indoors by just creating links. So if I select here I start a link from the hull system here, and I want to have all these requirements. All these requirements should be allocated to the hull. I'll make links from start. I have a number of links here. I guess the hull subsystem, yeah, I guess these mooring equipment and solutions are also part of the hull subsystem. So let's create links here also. the navigation subsystem. Let's allocate some requirements to the navigation subsystem as well. At least these two need to go there. And I guess these are also part of the navigation subsystem. Okay. So now I have created a number of links in doors, and I want these links to exist in the Enterprise Architect as well. So what I do is really just to go here and synchronize. Did I start SysML Bridge? Yes, I did. So now I have selected architecture view in both tools. Yep. I could show the log. See what happens. I don't want to update diagrams any longer, and I synchronize. And you can see that a number of satisfied connectors are created in Enterprise Architect. Okay. Synchronization finished. So if I want to visualize these relations, I could, for example, go to the hull subsystem here, and I could create a requirements diagram. Sorry. A diagram like this, requirements diagram. Yeah. So let's move the hull subsystem into the diagram. And sorry, where is the hull subsystem here? I can turn on the filter again. Here's the hull subsystem. And that one links to the SURS. It would be nice to have a SysML Bridge instance here also, just for the navigation. So let's minimize. So now if I select an object here, yeah, I could move this into the diagram. What? There you are. Nice. I made a mistake there. So instead of dragging the requirement into the diagram, I created a new relation. Anyway, I would like to see the requirement text also, like this. So here you can see as an example. So these links in doors between requirements and system elements, they are mapped onto satisfy links in Enterprise Architect. Now this allocation that you did in doors, you could do that in Enterprise Architect as well, and then synchronize the changes into doors. So let's do that. For example, the OLOCs, for example, they are actually part of the hull subsystem. So these requirements will also be allocated to the hull subsystem. So I drag this into the diagram, and now I create a satisfy link. Like this. And now let's synchronize. We could synchronize the entire can synchronize the entire architecture view here over to the door side. Not that one, it's this one. Right. Now I synchronize from Enterprise Architect to doors. Well, let's have a look at the log. Synchronize. We created links. We created a link here to SCRS 25. And I guess that's what we want to do. So this satisfy link here should now be on the door side as well. Here is the hull subsystem, and yeah, it actually links to SCRS 25. Fixed OLOCs, there you are. This concludes the demonstration. As you can see, the bridge connects doors and Enterprise Architect in a real-time fashion, making it easy to navigate in both directions and to synchronize in both directions. If you're interested in the bridge, please contact Syntel at syntel.se.